Do you feel like you're wasting your life staring at a screen, watching other people live out their dreams, whilst your life feels like it's going nowhere? Well, I did. But over the last year, I've been slowly replacing my phone with this pocket notebook, and I finally feel like I'm getting my life back from the algorithms. So in this video, I'm going to show you the surprisingly simple ways I've been using this pocket notebook to overcome my phone addiction, increase my productivity, and drastically improve my mental health. And to start with, let me show you why certain tasks, habits, and routines actually work better with pen and paper, and why I decided to stop using my phone for every task on my to-do list. So, have you ever had a load of really important tasks to do in the day, but when it gets to the evening, you realize you haven't done anything productive at all? Well, this still happens to me more times than I'd like to admit. And even though I usually sit down at my desk with the best intentions to be productive, I'd always find myself scrolling through Instagram instead of doing what I knew I needed to get done. But it turns out there's actually a reason why it's so easy to do this, and Nir Eyal introduced this to me in the book Indistractable. Because it turns out that most people aren't planning their days correctly, and this is one of the biggest reasons why most people procrastinate. Because I might have had a rough idea of what I wanted to get done in my days, but the biggest mistake I was making in my own life that was causing me to procrastinate on my phone to begin with was the fact I'd never actually document these tasks down. So my brain would kind of just default to the easy dopamine hit of scrolling through my phone. But when I started using my pocket notebook to manage these tasks, my procrastination stopped literally overnight. And I didn't need a Notion template, a new app, or some productivity guru screaming at me to work harder. So how do I do this? Well, the first way I use my notebook to save me from scrolling is to write down my top 3 priorities for the day. Usually this involves something for my health, like a gym workout, something for my wealth, like working on a script or an email, and something for my relationships. I'll keep this list open next to me on my desk, and this simple habit always gives me complete clarity on what I need to get done in the day. And this makes it easy to avoid scrolling through my phone on autopilot. This brings us to the next way I've been using my pocket notebook to replace my phone. And I've got to warn you, you might think this is wildly inefficient or sounds like a complete waste of time, but trust me, it's been surprisingly effective at curing my phone addiction. And it works like this. So have you ever heard a phone notification go off in the background, but when you go to check your phone, you realize nothing actually happened? I used to do this all the time, but it turns out I wasn't alone. Because a study in 2023 found that as many as 89% of people hallucinate these so-called phantom phone notifications. And I think the main reason why this was happening to me was because my life got to a point where I became reliant on my phone for everything. Even things that I didn't strictly need to use my phone for became another way for me to waste hours of my life scrolling. So when I decided to read the book Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, I decided to do something a bit different. And usually I go straight on my phone to find a podcast or a video summary of the book on YouTube. But this time, instead of trying to consume everything about the topic really quickly, I decided to try engaging with the book a little bit more deeply. And so the second way my pocket notebook has been replacing my phone has been to take physical notes on topics I find interesting. Now look, I don't do this for everything I consume. Gosh, that would be exhausting. But nowadays, if I'm watching a particularly useful YouTube video, or if I'm reading a book I know I want to remember and apply some of the concepts, I'll be sure to make physical notes on it. I still use my laptop to make digital notes, but whenever I write with a pen and paper, I feel way more in control of the content I consume, unlike these days where we're at the mercy of the algorithms, which is kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, let me know if you also feel like your life is being controlled by somebody else. But on that alarming note, this brings us on to the next way I've been using my pocket notebook to replace my phone. And to show you how it works, let me show you the one reason why most people will stay glued to their phone, so you can avoid this for yourself. So have you ever had one of those existential sort of moments of panic where you question everything you're doing in your life? Well, a couple of years ago, I was on the way home from university and had one of these exact moments myself, because when I started looking around the tube, I noticed that literally 99% of people around me were sitting hunched over scrolling through their phones. And this was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because I realized that most people are so uncomfortable during these moments of boredom, like their commute, they'd rather scroll on their phone to avoid being alone with their thoughts. Now, I appreciate this might all sound a little woohoo or out there, but what I'm trying to say is that my phone use drastically decreased only when I started to embrace these moments of boredom in my life, like my commute, rather than hide away from them with my phone. And so how do I do this? Well, the third way my notebook has been replacing my phone is that these days, instead of scrolling during these boring moments in my life, like my commute, I'll make sure to always take this notebook with me wherever I go. And this way, I have a healthier way of spending my time. There's no structure to a lot of what I do in this time. I mean, sometimes I'll make these random little doodles, I'll try to put some of my ideas into a framework to explain in a script, and I've even started using some of these pages from the notebook as props in some of my videos. But the point is, the next time you feel bored, instead of reaching for your phone, which is what everybody seems to do these days, try embracing where that boredom takes your brain, and you might find a creative part of you that you didn't expect to exist. And this brings us on to the next way this notebook is replacing my phone, because whilst I would often go to my phone out of boredom, I'd also waste hours mindlessly scrolling during another point my mental health was struggling. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but for the past 22 years or so all of my life, I've always gone through periods of anxiety. But back when I was younger, I would have used my phone to block out this kind of negative noise in my brain. This sort of worked in the moment, but I knew it was never a long-term solution to my anxiety, and I'd always end up feeling worse about myself after a long scrolling session. Whilst my mental health is a lot better now, still, any time there's a really stressful time in my life, this does seem to be a bit of a trigger for my anxiety to come back. And this actually happened recently when I was on the plane to visit my friend Mia in Italy. But this time, I didn't do the easy thing of mindlessly scrolling through my phone. Instead, the fourth way I've been using my pocket notebook to replace scrolling on my phone is that these days, whenever I'm going through a tough time or maybe in a little bit of a negative headspace, I'll spend 5 to 10 minutes writing down how I'm feeling. I always find that getting my negative thoughts down on paper takes their power away from me, and this always makes me feel a lot better. And because I always keep this notebook with me all of the time, I know I can rely on this technique to get me out of most sticky situations. But this brings us on to another big problem, because sometimes even getting in control of these negative thoughts, I'd still procrastinate. However, there's another even more powerful way I've been using this pocket notebook to replace my phone, and it's a technique that's essentially cured my procrastination. So watch this video next, and I'll show you a simple trick I use with my pocket notebook that's helped me stop procrastinating for good.